Good afternoon, YouTube. Los Angeles Prepper here, and I'm going to do a short video off the cuff on 5 geopolitical things going on right now that I think are worth keeping an eye on because they tell us a lot about the world. They tell us about um, what things can be like. So, number one, North Korea. Am I hawkish on actions with North Korea? Look, I'm not the commander in chief, so it's not really important. But do I think everything that North Korea is doing is just talk? If it was just talk, I would say it was just talk, but they are kind of launching missiles that have different capabilities at any rate. Now, we launch missiles, and other countries launch missiles, but we're not exactly on talking terms with North Korea. So the fact that they're a little more unpredictable gives people cause for concern. Now, granted, they've been saying and sort of they've been an unpredictable state for a number of years, but with more recent alleged nuclear tests and missile launches, kind of getting a little more scary, so to speak. So, North Korea for obvious reasons. Number two, Syria. I don't know if you realize this, but Syria went from we're going to get involved, we're going to help the rebels, we're going to help the Free Syrian Army, Assad is bad, he used chemical weapons, etc., etc. And, I sometimes I think if America hadn't, got on the phone and called their senators that we would be at war with Assad right now. At least in a more overt sort of war. There's, who knows what sort of activity from our government supporting different groups over there. We do have troops, maybe not a lot of troops, but we have military personnel and funds going to Syria. What those funds are going to and what our troops are doing over there, I don't know. Interesting thing about Syria is that Russia is over there as well, not necessarily ostensibly supporting Assad, although they are sort of stronger allies, certainly, than we are with Assad. Considering that he was our former enemy, I don't think we would be best buddies with him. Even though we certainly could be. But at any rate, so Russia is over there bombing ISIS. Now, what kind of blows my mind about this situation is let's, take the conspiratorial approach that America is trying to overthrow Assad because that's what America does. Get involved in other countries, try to destabilize Gaddafi, Iraq, Iran. But anyways, so let's assume that that's, worst case scenario, we're up to nefarious things in Syria. We're supporting groups XYZ trying to take over Assad. What's really fascinating is that Russia is getting involved in saying, well, if Assad isn't the enemy and you're, then we should support Assad and attack the terrorists. So it's almost like a dual proxy war going on in Syria where Russia is attacking the people that we're supporting that are trying to overthrow Assad, that we're not really admitting that we're trying to overthrow him, but we still kind of are. And it's, it's not talked about in the news very often. None of the wars that we're in right now are really talked about in the news very often, which is kind of strange to be at, this perpetual war with multiple countries. I don't know if it's in the best interest of America, but the military-industrial complex is a very real thing. So, number three, Argentina. Argentina has had some inflate, and I don't know if I meant Venezuela. I don't know if I mean both of them. I think Argentina's had some inflation issues. %24% in September 2017. It averaged 201% from 1944 until 2017, reaching an all-time high of 20,262% in March 1990. this is insane. So yeah, Argentina is having some economic challenges right now. They had an economy that was very much tied to oil. I don't know what else. I don't know what their other economic problems were necessarily. But Argentina, as a struggling country, especially as a struggling, essentially first world country, is a very interesting case study. Corruption, stagflation, unemployment, inflation, confidence has taken hits, they grew too quickly. Yeah, so just kind of made a lot of bad mistakes, and I guess they weren't able to work themselves out of it, and now their inflation is just like really awful. And of course, Venezuela having economic problems with also being really tied to oil. Maduro's in charge and doing, who knows what he's doing, but country is still suffering, and a lot of people try to point to socialism, that they were trying to support everyone and take everyone's money and distributing it out, but I think their bigger problem economically was just that they didn't diversify enough. They were, you know, completely focused on kind of oil and the riches that come with just like being lucky, so to speak, and having that natural resource, within your borders. And I think they got complacent. Then, of course, the oil got sort of funny and things got more expensive, and they had a lot of financial debt, and they're defaulting on loan payments now. And, a lot of banks are going to lose a lot of money. Not that I cry many tears for banks losing millions, but, if you had your money in not a huge bank, even the FDIC, I think, is only up to 250,000. So I don't know how it works in other countries depending on what the insurance is. Say you have $1 million in the bank, but only 500,000 or only a quarter million of it is insured. If you have a bank that's invested in Venezuelan bonds or something, if there starts to be a run on your bank and your bank runs out of funds and your bank defaults and says, I'm sorry, I can't cover your account, but you're insured up to X, but you had Y in the account. I don't know if those are problems you and I have to deal with, but someone's going to be having those problems. And even though a lot of people would say, like, you don't need to worry about what happens with other people, it's not good when anyone experiences, wealth destruction like that, unless they're like I don't know, unless they're a bad person or something, but essentially, that sucks if you're rich or poor to have any amount of money in your bank vanish. And of course, inflation is doing that. Inflation is doing that even if their money is in the bank. So yeah, Argentina and Venezuela, both interesting countries with interesting stuff going on. Spain and Catalonia. I think one of the leaders of Spain just surrendered himself of Catalonia surrendered himself to the Spanish authorities. They're, Catalonia has been fighting for their independence and protesting in the streets, having votes. Catalonian legislators are walking out of government meetings and such. Not meetings, but assemblies. So, sort of a really interesting case study in independence and people assembling and trying to assert power over the government that's controlling them. And we all have governments controlling us, You might say, well, oh, you're in America and you're free. Well, I'm not that free. I'm pretty free, but I'm not completely free. Anyways, that was number 4, Spain, Catalonia. Number 5, Ukraine and the war in Donbass. So a lot of you might remember this whole thing with Crimea that went on, where Russia sort of annexed Crimea, and kind of weird articles about tanks rolling across borders and troops moving and things like that. And whether or not Russia annexed Crimea or it previously owned Crimea and it repurposed it, I don't know. But there is a war going on in northeastern Ukraine, just kind of like in a little tiny part, sort of relative to where Catalonia is to Spain, kind of the same area, Donbass, is to Ukraine. If I could spell that right. But look it up if you haven't Googled the war in Donbass. Look it up. Interesting stuff. It's been going on for a while. Man, this is a really small picture. But you can kind of see what I'm talking about here, like that little red part right there. Oh, I can't get the phone to focus on it. Is Donbass. This is like a blown up view, but just that one little part is so the red says cities controlled by the DNR and the LNR, that's like the resistance, and then orange is cities where there's fighting, and you can't really tell, but that's like over here. And then blue is cities controlled by the Ukrainian government. So whoever the DNR and the LNR, they're causing grief for the people of Ukraine. And for the Ukrainian military, I mean, it's just it's a war. It's a very small war, at least in the scale of the term war, but it is a war. And they are fighting each other with bullets and weapons and all variety of death devices. I don't know if they've gotten too much into like assault helicopters and jet planes and things of that nature, but Ukraine does have an air force, and depending on how overt the support for the rebels will be, they may or may not get air support as well. So interesting stuff. North Korea, Syria, Argentina, Venezuela, Spain, and Catalonia, Ukraine, and the war in Donbass. A lot of stuff going on in the world. We don't have to hope and pray that things are going to get crazy in the USA to see what it's like. We can just look at the news, look at a video feed, read a couple articles, and see examples in present day of things getting crazy. So tell me what you think about some of this global stuff that's going on. Is it a sign of the times changing? Is it just life as usual? Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.